Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads to continue with the story of my life. Chapter 19, A Love Affair with Literature. Books have been so important in my education process I shall go back to the time when I began reading. It was May 1887 where I read my first connected story. I was 7 years old, and from that day onwards I devoured every printed page that my hungry hands have felt. Initially, I had only a few books raised in print. Readers for Beginners, a collection of children's stories, and a book about Earth called Our World. That was all I had, I think, and I read them repeatedly until the words were so worn out one could barely make them out. Miss Sullivan read to me sometimes, spelling out into my hand short stories and poems that she was sure I'd understand. But I like reading myself than being read to. I began an avid reader during my first visit to Boston. I read a part of each day in the institution library, moving from bookcase to bookcase, looking for a book I liked. I read irrespective of whether I understood one word in 10 on a page. I was fascinated by the words themselves and did not take conscious account of what I read. My mind must have been impressionable then, as I recalled many words and sentences later, even though I hadn't the faintest notion of what they meant then. Even my friends wondered at the richness of my vocabulary when I spoke these words and sentences. When I was 8 years old, my teacher discovered me reading The Scarlet Letter. She gave me a book she said she was better than Scarlet Letter for me. It was a beautiful story of a little boy titled Little Lord Fauntleroy, and she promised to read it to me the following summer, but the book was forgotten in the excitement of my seashore visit. It was only in August when Miss Sullivan narrated the story to me, and it was fascinating. Mr. Anna Aganos had the story embossed on my request, and I read it again and again until I had it memorized. Little Lord Fauntleroy was the book that truly interested me in reading. I read many books during the next 2 years, like Lamb's Tales from Shakespeare, The Arabian Nights, Little Women, The Swiss Family Robinson, Heidi, and many more. I love the Jungle Book and Wild Animals I have known because I love animals. I also fell in love with ancient Greece thanks to the Iliad. The Bible is also close to my heart, and reading it always gives me a sense of comfort. What can be said about Shakespeare? Macbeth impressed me the most, and I read King Lear and The Merchants of Venice soon after. I have been introduced to Shylock and Satan at the same time, and could not help sympathizing with them. I felt no one gave them a fair chance, despite their sins. They were such broken spokes in the great deal of good, which in due course would have been made whole again. I also love poetry and history, and I have read every historical work I could get my hands on. It all began when I was gifted Swin, the world history, on my 13th birthday. I was introduced to French and German literature in college. The German puts strength before beauty and truth before convention in both life and literature. The best part I like about German literature is a woman's self-sacrificing love. It is wonderfully expressed in Goethe's Faust. Molière and Racine are my favorite French writers. I also like Balzac and admire Victor Hugo. I am sorry if I've written too much about my book friends, but that explains why my circle of friends is so limited. I like Carl, Wordsworth, Mark Twain, and Scott too. The list, as they say, is endless. In a word, literature is my utopia. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.